This is Cheloniacast, episode 53. Today we're joined by Chris and Casey Leone. You may know them from their popular YouTube channel or social media presence, where they share really interesting videos and photos from their adventures and work with, hundreds of turtles and tortoises and all reptiles. They've owned and operated Garden State Tortoise, a reptile rehabilitation, rescue, and breeding center for over a decade, where they have hundreds of animals now and are doing some really incredible work with sort of education but also with a lot of different projects. And we're really excited to talk to them today about some of their conservation work and preservation work. Thank you for joining us. We're also joined by Charlie Moorcroft, who helped set this up. Really excited to have him here, sort of add to the conversation with some of his work. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're excited for this conversation.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
So to kick things off, it's at this point, however many of these we've been doing, and we kind of start things off with, the same sort of question, worded slightly differently. So like this, out of all like animals and various things that you could get into, cars, muscles, like whatever, giraffes, I don't know, like why turtles, like why this group of animals specifically, why turtles?
I think it could have been, for me at least, it could have been anything. I was 5 years old. I was playing in the sandbox with my G.I. Joes, and my dad was mowing the lawn, and he skimmed over a box turtle. He didn't, really wound it too badly. He just kind of scathed it, and he handed it to me, and that was really it for me. But, I think he could have handed me anything back then, But because it was a turtle, it just it set the stage at that point for everything else,
Yeah, I think, I met you, and that's what got me into turtles and tortoises, but I've been an animal lover my whole life. Connected with him and started Garden State Tortoise and just kind of fell in love with it. I worked at the zoo in our early years with 2 adult Aldabra tortoises that kind of stole my heart, and ever since just been captivated.
Yeah, it's weird, it's weird how it happened, weird. But it somehow turtles have always connected me to the most exciting parts of my life, and they connected us.
Yeah.
So it like I said, it could have probably been anything back then, but I wouldn't have it any other way, and somehow it still is. Turtles and tortoises.
Funny you say giraffes. I used to take care of giraffes.
Yeah, you did. She used to take care of giraffes.
Yeah, worked with horses, all kinds of animals, bears. So.
How did you two meet? Since that's kind of along the topic.
How did we meet?
Yeah.
We love this question.
Yeah, not because of turtles.
Music.
Yeah, I was
music and beer, actually.
Music and beer. Yeah, you're right. It was music and beer. I was a working musician for most of my life, earlier in life. And we were doing a photo shoot for the band, and our manager at the time, her little sister was best friends with Casey. They were still very close. And the clubs and the bars that we were playing, they wanted us to come up with something different for the photo shoot than just your typical lead singer standing in the front, the rest of the band's behind him, everybody's looking tough, So they came up with the idea of having like a crazy party going on. There's all these girls at this party. And we were like, okay, if you can find that many girls, go right ahead, because we sure as hell don't know that many. And she ended up pulling together all these girls for this photo shoot, and Casey ended up coming along for the beer.
Free beer.
Yeah, and I took a liking to her, and she had no idea who I was or why she was even really there.
Yeah.
But here we are, and now it's about turtles.
Cool.
That's a cool story. Unrelated. A lot of people I know, they'll meet doing turtle work or some kind of field work, but that was sort of a different area, a different passion. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, she had no idea what she was getting herself into either, really. I didn't tell her about the turtle thing until, I don't know, 7 months in.
No, it was maybe like a couple of weeks.
Was it that soon?
Yeah, it was soon.
I'm embarrassed. Yeah.
And now
it run.
it seems like it's grown into at least what you're doing with the YouTube channel now. In the past it was more just solely turtles, I think, and now it's the whole family aspect, which I think is really cool. It's almost kind of a vlog style thing.
Yeah, and I think that's more you're doing, because I'm I'm always trying to scientific about things, and we kind of didn't realize the opportunity we had there as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And she would always explain to me, like, this is our life. Like, it's a unique life. We're doing this as a family. Like, let's just be real.
Yeah, when you're in it, you don't realize, like, we're so used to having all of these animals and living this way, but not everybody lives like this.
No.
And I have to constantly remind him, like, hey, what we're doing, like, other people don't do this. It'd be cool to show them how our life works,
Yeah,
things.
So that's really, yeah, you're right. It's kind of what it's turned into, a little bit of a vlog style thing where whatever is going on, we, for the most part, we just try to film it, sometimes it's, fun and exciting. Other times it can be heartbreaking, but that's part of what we deal with. Whether it's conservation or preservation, you're dealing with heartbreak. It could be something as simple as a turtle that you were tracking is getting hit in the road, or like some of these rescues we take in that we know might not make it,
Yeah.
Right. I think we can touch on the YouTube, I think, in a little bit. That's a really interesting one to talk about. But Chris, you mentioned sort of the science aspect of things. And the one thing I remember, at least, just initially, some of my first kind of forays into turtle work was looking at the work you did with Herman's tortoises or Testudo, and the story of you and Bumblebee and such. Maybe you could tell us about that and just kind of what got you interested in the Mediterranean tortoises.
Yeah, they're above everything. They're my passion genus, passion species. And similar to when I was 5 and my father handed me the box turtle, which started it all. When I was 9, my grandfather, my Grandpa Leone, he had passed away. So my grandmother went back to Italy, and she spent a whole summer there with all the relatives over there. And she came home with a little baby. She smuggled it back on the airplane. She didn't know she was doing anything wrong, and at the time, nobody really cared. In fact, the airline had her take it out of her purse so that it wasn't like being suffocated in there, and like they were like seeing if it needed water. So she's sitting on this plane back to the USA with this little baby tortoise, and everybody thought it was great. So she.
That was the 80s, right?
Yeah, it was the 80s. And right? No. It was
How
early 90s.
Early 90s.
It was I was 9. It was early 90s. So she brought this little tortoise home, and at that point, the only thing I was used to was the box turtles we'd find in the neighborhood. The red-eared sliders that my parents or my other relatives would get from Petland Discount in New York City. And painted turtles that we would accidentally catch, when we were fishing for sunnies. So she brings this thing home, and we go up to her North Jersey City place to welcome her back, and the whole family's there, and she's going through all the different souvenirs that she brought home for everybody, the liquor, the candies, and the shirts and other souvenirs, and then all of a sudden at the very end, she's standing. It's funny, like, I don't remember that much, but this kind of stuff I remember like it just happened yesterday. And I remember her standing in front of the window to the backyard, and that was the kitchen. And she's standing there with this little clear box. And my dad goes, "Chris, come here. Grandma's got something else for you." So I go over there, and I'm looking at it, and in this box is a little turtle. But I thought it was like a little porcelain or ceramic turtle. So I'm like, "Oh, cool, Grandma, thanks." And my dad was like, "That's it?" And I'm like, "What?" And then I looked at it, and at that moment, the thing turned its head, and I lost it. I couldn't believe it. This is a living brick, and I'd never seen one like this. I'm like, that's not a box turtle. That's not a red-eared slider. So I was, totally freaked out in a very positive way about it, and that thing became everything to me. But I didn't know what it was, and my dad was always trying to help me with stuff, so he bought the Barron's turtle book, the paperback, the thin one with the green cover. I think it's got a Russian or a Greek on the cover of it. And it had like the special chapter, Understanding Your Pet Turtle, in it. And we got that book, and that's how we figured out what it was. We were like, okay, this is a Herman's tortoise. But at that point, I didn't even know that there were different subspecies of it. So fast forward a little bit, we had that thing for about a year, didn't know what we were doing. We kept it in a 20-gallon fish tank on newspaper. So the thing wasn't growing properly. It was growing too fast. And then that summer, it ended up dying. And I was, I never forgave myself for it. Like, I was so crushed by it that I had to do better. I had to figure out exactly what it was that I had. And so for the next, I don't know how long, I mean, so many years, I kept researching Herman's tortoises. And then when I, would like save up allowance or my first job or whatever, I'd save up money, and my father would drive me over the border into New York to Fred's Pet Center, which used to be in Spring Valley, New York. And if I had enough money, I could buy a turtle or a tortoise from him, because you couldn't sell them or buy them in New Jersey. So I had to go to New York. So I was like, oh, he's got Herman's tortoises. Or if I was at a reptile show, I would try to buy a Herman's tortoise or a Greek tortoise, because they looked similar to what my grandmother had brought back. But even at that young age, something was not the same. I was like, this still looks different. I don't get it. Then I figured out, oh, there's a Western Herman's tortoise. There's an Eastern Herman's tortoise. So, well, which one comes from Italy? Well, it was the Western. That just sparked this sickly passion for the Testudo species. And then from that point on, I just became completely immersed in them. And I still did, started working with other species, and I still had my pet box turtles and my sliders and stuff like that. But the Testudo just became this, I was completely enamored with them. And as I got older, I would just dive more into, specifics about them from a scientific standpoint. And then here we go.
So that kind of motivated you to undertake the genetic project that you did. I believe it was 2015, where you analyzed a large quantity of animals. What was it like to get a lot of those initial animals representing different lineages of the Herman's tortoises? And what was that genetic project like? I'm sure there's some challenges with that kind of thing, trying to do that.
I would say you were a little excited.
I was a little bit excited. Yeah, actually, we're sending out genetics today on Greek tortoises, and we're
sitting on top of the box.
Our computer is sitting on top of the box that's going out, because we needed to elevate the computer a little bit. It's got all the genetic samples in it. But anyway, so a little bit shy of 2015, well, actually, a couple of years before that was when I was really getting involved with. I was involved with the Tortoise Trust and Andy Highfield, and I always looked up to him because he was, across the pond, but he was so into the Testudo species himself, and he had discovered in 1990 different types of Greek tortoises, which he had come up with his own genus for them at the time. And I always really followed in his footsteps of learning from him and reading. I used to watch his DVDs and reading his books and joining the forums over there for the Tortoise Trust. And that bled into me finding other books, and then really hitting the internet hard to find out all I could about, primarily Herman's tortoises, but all Testudos. And I started to notice these differences before I would even read. I would look at a picture of a tortoise from Italy and then a picture of a tortoise from France and be like, yeah, they're very similar, but there's something different about them. And then, I started translating these Italian and French and Spanish forums, and I'd be like, they're talking about these different morphological traits. The phenotype is different here than it is there. With that, I started fishing around trying to figure out how to get more of them here, because it started with, like you asked before, Bumblebee. There was a breeder in the USA, Charlie, you might remember him. His name was George Ullman, and he owned Turtle World USA in Arcadia, Florida. And he was another one that was really into the Testudos when nobody else really cared. Everybody was more interested in star tortoises and radiated tortoises. And he had all these different Testudo. So I would trade him, and I would try to get these animals from him, but he would never come off adults. And then I think it was 2005 or 6, he was calling it quits. He was leaving the USA to go back to Germany, where he was originally from, and he needed to sell his whole collection. I got wind of this. I contacted him. I said, do you have any Western Hermans? And he said, I have 2 adults left. I can tell you exactly where they're from. I collected them myself, like back in like the 70s. They're old adult females. I don't even know if they're reproductive anymore, but if you want them, you can have them. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So I got these 2 females, really old females. I mean, the annuli were gone, bowling ball smooth, that he had collected in Grosseto, Italy. And I named one Bumblebee because she looked just like a bee. And I named the other one Yellow Jacket because she was primarily yellow, even though they were from the same locality. And I, again, completely enamored with them.
Did you name them or did I name them?
No, I got them. But no, you named the twins.
Oh, the twins.
Yeah, the fast forward to the twins. Yeah. So, which I'll bring up. But so Bumblebee and Yellow Jacket were my first like real look at. Okay, so this is what they look like from here, or at least these are 2 examples of what they look like from here. Then in 2009, I was able to locate a group of legally acquired specimens from the island of Mallorca in Spain. I got those imported, and I was like, "What? This is nuts! Like these are at least to my eye, totally different animals." And then that really made me become obsessed with the phenotypes and the different morphological traits and everything concerning them. So then I just kept going with it. I kept trying to find, like, there were different groups that had been confiscated in Italy or in Spain and in France. And I would get like the ministry approval and have the right people behind legally shipping them and going through the customs paperwork and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and CITES and everything. And at that point, I was able to get all these different distinct groups. And just looking at them, I would say to Casey, and she'd be like, this is crazy. Like, what are you looking at? And I started to get her to see it. And I would be like, this animal is not this animal, or tell me what you see. And she would say it. She'd be like, well, this one's face is like really more elongate than that one. And this one's shape is different. I'm like, yes, I'm telling you, I know this one has got to be from here. And this one's got to be from there. So then Bill Zavikian, who's legendary in the turtle and tortoise community. He pretty much started radiateds in the USA. He had imported some baby Western Herman's tortoises.
I remember that.
Yeah, and he was like, listen, I think I can get some funding and approval to do a big genetic project on all these Western Hermans. And I said, count me in. Whatever I got to do, I want to do it. So he ended up getting the Henry Dorley Zoo genetics department to fund this. They were super interested in it. And he sampled his animals, and we took 54 adult Western Herman's tortoises to our veterinarian at the time. We were at the vet for over 6 hours, taking blood samples from these poor things, their necks. Yeah, and it was like it was absolutely insane and painstaking.
They're so strong too. Like I remember restraining them, and you're like actually sweating because you have to hold their little.
And you want to talk about resilience with them. We'd put them down and they would start eating immediately. We'd be like, oh, I guess they don't care.
They didn't care.
So we sampled 54 of them, packaged everything up appropriately, sent it out to the genetics lab, and we just waited and waited and waited. And 6 months later, now it was 2015, and we get an email and it said genetics results for Leone, Testudo Hermani. And I was like, oh my God, like stop what you're doing. We sat down and we looked at this, and I was right. Just by looking at them, almost every single animal assigned, it corresponded beautifully with its type locality. And, some of the challenges were that this genetics department only had certain primers that they could work with. So, there's of course more to the animal that we couldn't really see for, people that don't fully understand genetics, which I'm still one of them, and we, they said that, just keep in mind, but anything that would assign like 50% and above to that locality it's got to be from this locality, and it was just flooring, and so I wrote up a section of our website, a paper, if you will, it's not published or anything, and to explain the project to people. And then that led to more things. And now here we are, we're doing it with Greek tortoises now, but this is more for the Greek tortoises. It's to understand the subspecies rather than locality. We knew all of these animals.
It's opposite, right?
Yeah.
We know the locality, but we
have a general locality of the Greeks. Yeah. With the Westerns, we knew they were going to be Westerns, the western subspecies. But that's just I don't know. I know I probably sound like a broken record to a lot of people out there, but I never get tired of talking about it. It to me, it's just so incredible how, and it even comes down to the alligator snapping turtles.
Yeah.
There's just not enough respect to understanding, like, hey, go ahead. Okay, you can call this animal an alligator snapping turtle, and you can call this animal an alligator snapping turtle. But guess what? This one came from here and it looks like this, and this one came from there and it looks like that. So I know you guys appreciate that kind of stuff, and there's just a world of discovery out there as far as this stuff goes. Like that's just a tiny little thing that we did,
Well, part of my passion for like a lot of that was inspired by seeing all of your work and your content when I was a little kid. I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world to see like that, how just the physical appearance of any turtles, but I mean the tortoises in particular, varies just by single sites and localities, and that started that for me.
Yeah.
And the whole like species and that, and then I found a megacephalic musk turtle at one point, and that was it for me. So I started following turtles that were really megacephalic, and I got into that, and then all the different different sites. I really thought that was really cool. That like it was so foreign to me. It was like they're all the same, right? But it's like, well, no, they don't. They all look. It's more complicated than that. So I thought that was like.
I saw that red ear you posted.
What?
Megalocephalic red ear?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, brought some appreciation to a species that people are always, forgetting about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we caught that spring river that is full of like snails that the loggerhead musks eat. So like she must have been released there when she was young. And I mean, I have her and she pooped out a bunch of snails, of course. But it's like, well, she's been eating mussels or she's been eating snails, and that's why her head is like that. But yeah, then I got really into like the alligator snappers and the different map turtles, and it was like how the same species you can kind of tell what part of the river system they come from, just shape of the shell, build of the head, coloration, like the same kind of traits. It's just like, I don't know, I love that kind of detail. It's like one of the coolest things.
Yep, 100%.
And there's direct conservation implications with a lot of what you're doing. The Herman's tortoises are interesting, as you pointed out. With the Greek tortoises, it's sub-specific level, but at Herman's tortoises, you're looking at a level of variation that's haplotype level. It's sort of below. It's just geographic variation that's sort of intrinsic to how genetics works, and that's really interesting. And the Herman's tortoise in particular is in a little more of a dire conservation situation than a lot of people maybe know. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit and why that variation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, and again, a lot of times, we come from the hobby, and we've just been fortunate enough to branch out and do these, bigger things with being involved in conservation and genetics and whatever else. But, we come from the hobby, and, there's with the exception of snakes, there's not too many splitters in the turtle and tortoise hobby. You have some, but then you have a lot of, well, it's a Herman's tortoise, man. Just put it in with the Herman's tortoises. It's a Greek tortoise, man. Put it in with the Greek, it's a cherry head. Keep it with the redfoots, whatever. It's just a redfoot tortoise. No, it's not, Yeah. Sure, you can have your opinion all you want. Nobody's going to, shit on you for that. But it's really interesting because when we come from the hobby, sometimes, our views can be askewed a little bit on what's actually going on in the natural world with them. The Western Herman's tortoise is one of the most endangered reptiles of Western Europe. Even the Eastern is threatened now. Okay. So they're not these, sure, I'm sure there's geographical locations where there's a lot of them, just like, when I went to do bog turtle work, I couldn't believe how many we saw, but that's just that one little spot. And it's the same for Herman's tortoises, but you have some localities, Vauoise, France, and Albera, Spain, which could very well go extinct in our lifetime. There's that few of them. They're extremely homogenous at this point. The inbreeding between them is unbelievable because there's not that many of them. And, people in the hobby sometimes forget that. A lot of times we're focused on the Cora species. Oh my gosh, the Coras are so critically endangered. We got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this, we got to do that. That's great. Don't stop working with them. But here's a tortoise over here that just because so many people think it's just a Herman's tortoise could start disappearing, if not already. They're in a lot of trouble. But one of the unique threats that they face is not just habitat destruction, human encroachment, poaching for the illegal pet trade, farmers killing them because they're eating their crops. It's impurity.
False identification.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Identification is huge. And like Casey just said, with this false identification, people don't know what they have. They're not caring to realize what they have. Oh, this looks different, but it must just be a Herman's tortoise. They're just ditching them. So you've got,
well, that carries over to the Greek tortoises too.
100%.
With false identification. A lot of what we do is trying to properly identify all these different subspecies.
Yeah.
Because that's where you have to start. A lot of people don't realize that.
That's a good point, because identification with anything is huge, and too many people don't take it seriously. So what's happened is in Europe, people are releasing, or animals are escaping into the environments where, it's an invasive species again. It's red-eared sliders everywhere. But the eastern subspecies, Testudo hermani bulgari, is being released or lost into parts of Italy and parts of France, where now these hybrid tortoises are showing up. And the gene pool is getting all mixed up. Animals are being found where even researchers are going, what is this? This is clearly a wild tortoise, based on its appearance and the way it's behaving and everything, but something's muddied about it. So, they were doing research on those animals and discovering that there are imposters. There are eastern subspecies being released into these endangered western ranges, and they're creating these natural occurring hybrids now. So impurity is not just threatening them in the pet trade, it's threatening them in nature too. And that's even in the books. That's not me coming up with that on my own. You read the major books on Testudo, and they're talking about the specific locations in nature where this is happening. And they're trying to come up with conservation management units to bring back these disappearing localities. Albera, Spain is the most endangered population of the Western Hermits. They're trying to look at these other populations to see where they can pull genetics from, by releasing these animals into these other habitats to try to bring back the Western Hermits tortoise. But not only are they going to potentially mess up the phenotype found in that area, but they're finding that, hey, we can't use that animal. It's actually a hybrid. Even though we found that in the wild, it's a hybrid. So to me, that's a very unique threat, particularly to the Western Hermits tortoise, which I know can happen with other species as well, but it's something that I've really paid attention to.
It's a problem of scale, and you're working at such a small scale, right? It becomes challenging to make sure everything is sort of lined up in a way that works for conservation. You mentioned the Greek tortoises. That's the other Testudo species, one of the others, but that's a really interesting one. I remember flipping through the checklist, and that and the European pond turtle are the most confusing range maps possible. I noticed in the most recent checklist, they had to actually put the map that's listed under the just generic species name to designate what the colors were, because it's the first time I've ever seen tourmaline used in any sort of color setting, because they hit so many. Yeah. Regardless, I'm curious, what subspecies of Greek tortoise give you the hardest time, or what's your take on the current designations of sort of classification of Greek tortoises? This is,
man, I'm triggered right now. Yeah. When I saw the questions, when you sent them to me, I was like, this is going to be awesome. I love these questions. Do you want to answer that one first?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll let you go.
Testudo terrestris is a complete mess. It is a complete mess.
I have to draw myself maps when it comes to Greek tortoises.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's just, wait, what's this? What's that? It's crazy, but it's so interesting.
Terrestris it should literally just be pulled down, and they should spend the next 20 years just looking at that and then come back to us later, because the range of that subspecies is over the top, and they look, the differences in them is unbelievable. And this is only my personal take on it, so nobody should run with it. But I feel that a lot of taxonomists and whoever's researching them are probably fed up with them to begin with, like trying to understand them. And I kind of feel like things have just been simplified when they really shouldn't have been. It's just something that needs so much more attention. And the common names don't help, because from day one, when these animals first started getting imported into the American pet trade, they're golden Greeks. Why? Well, because they're gold. Yeah, but so is that one over there. And hey, look, you see this box of these animals that just came from Syria that you're calling golden Greeks? What you're actually doing is you're pulling the prettiest ones, throwing them up on kingsnake.com and calling them golden Greeks, and giving the darker ones or the less attractive ones away to people for cheaper prices, when really you had all you had there was variation in a population. Okay. I can walk out back here. Casey and I can go out back probably tomorrow with how warm it's going to be. We'll find orange eastern box turtles and we'll find yellow eastern box turtles. Okay. Literally same population. So it's not just a color thing. And the pet trade makes things a lot more difficult when it comes to common names, but to defend them a little bit, the taxonomists don't make it much easier, okay, because they're using blanket terms. Okay, this whole range, all these different countries is Testudo terrestris. How? Have all of those animals been genetically sampled? Have all of them been put up against each other and everything else? So when it comes to the Greek tortoises, those golden Greeks, which the other two common names is Levantine tortoise and Mesopotamian tortoise, those to me are the biggest headache for anybody involved in Testudo.
They're all a headache, honey.
They're all a headache.
Except a hybrid.
Yeah, maybe. Did I go too far?
No,
That's interesting. That's definitely. I remember I was looking for tortoises early on, and the golden Greek designation was just. I remember looking into all of that. Some of the other ones, the Eastern Greek tortoises, like the Buxtoni and the Zarudni. I'm sure I've butchered the name pronunciation, but those ones are a little bit more. I've seen photos of those that are like desert tortoise size, like
seriously,
like that.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Do you know much about those, and what's the deal with those in sort of captive collections? What's known about their ecology and habitat preferences?
So the Eastern clade is, I refer to that. That's your Ibra clade. All those animals really correspond pretty closely with Ibra. Even some of the terrestris, they just like smaller. They look like smaller versions of Ibra. And there's parts where they think that the Ibra are integrating with terrestris, but as far as, Zarudnii, again, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Buxtoni, what else? Armeniaca, those animals are pretty unknown in captive collections. Now, there are breeders or keepers in the United States that claim to have Buxtoni. I can't say whether they really do or don't. They don't correspond very well with the photos coming out of the wild of these animals. But that could just be because they're captive raised and, they took on a captive bred look. I'm sure you guys know what I mean as far as that goes. But all of those tortoises are of considerable size. Some of them look like little mini Galapagos tortoises. They're 30 centimeters, 36 centimeters, tortoises that are more than a foot long. And Ibra are very big. We have some real giant ones here that came out of Turkey, 10, 11 inches. But some of these other tortoises are really big as well. But I will say, and we recently had an experience with this ourselves, one animal that has been so forgotten, going back to Andy Highfield from the Tortoise Trust, he discovered these animals, was what was originally dubbed Testudo whitei. Those are the Algerian giants. Okay, so they're coming out of Algeria in North Africa, and these animals are 13 inches plus. Okay. Eleanor from the European Turtle Alliance, who is another Testudo nut like we are, she and I are always going back and forth about whitei and how they are massive, but they actually don't really have a scientific classification anymore. So in 1990, Andy Highfield discovered the Tunisian and the Algerian Greeks, and he dubbed them a new genus, Furculocheles. So you had Furculocheles nabulensis, which was the little Tunisian, and Furculocheles whitei, which was these giant, 13-inch Algerian Greek tortoises. They later removed, they debunked the genus and made them both Testudo Graeca. But then several years later, we got rid of whitey eye entirely. And these giant Algerian tortoises were dubbed something else. I think they were considered part of the nominate. They were Graeca. Fast forward a few more years, they bring whitey eye back. And actually, I think this is 2023, the most recent taxonomic classification of Greek tortoises in the Western clade. They brought back whitey eye for a completely different tortoise. So now it's these other little tiny things, or close to being, that tiny, that resemble the Nabulensis, which is still a very distinct subspecies and probably one of the most. But now they brought back this, debunked Testudo Graeca whitey eye as something totally different. So our heads are all spinning at this point. We don't know what is what, but I will tell you that quite possibly the largest Greek tortoises out there belong to the Western clade, and they come from Algeria. And I mean, they are absolutely enormous.
I'd love to go see them.
Yeah. Well, we are going to see them.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It's the size variability is really interesting, and just the morphology. That brings up something else that you've mentioned before, is that there's some level of confusion about the naming, the taxonomy, the systematics of it. But then also, is it possible there's unrecognized variation that needs to be recognized for class? Is there any examples you have where there's a specific designation you think is multiple subspecies, so there's some variation that's hidden that hasn't been diagnosed yet?
That I think is appropriate for terrestris. You've got crazy size spectrum going on there, all different colorations. Head structure is different, shell structure is different.
That's what's really interesting is the head and the shell structure. I mean,
and you and I both relied very heavily on head structure for a lot of animals, and especially with the Testudo now. But terrestris is, I would put money on it that if they really pay attention to that taxa, they're going to come up with, wow, we've got way more Greek tortoises than we thought. It comes down to that genetic standpoint, but at least from a locality specific standpoint, you of course have variation within a population, but you've got animals from Israel that don't look like animals from Syria, and you've got animals from Syria that don't look like ones from Jordan, and then there's ones down in southern Turkey that are which could very well be those intergrades with Testudo Graeca ibra, because they're bigger, but they're not quite as yellow as ones from Jordan. That is the taxon that really needs to be. I mean, it needs attention, major attention, all from all different avenues. So I think that's where I would be totally shocked if we don't find something else out there. But we are also already looking at a Greek tortoise that comes out of Libya that is not your classic Libyan Greek tortoise, which is Testudo Graeca Cheloniacast. We're looking at a totally different one now. There's nothing to be shared yet, other than preliminary results are saying that it might be something new. So.
Interesting. So that taxa may be multiple in that region of Libya.
Yep. Fascinating.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've had some conversations with a few people about those, and there's just really interesting photos from in situ shots of them, and just the desert habitat is just. I mean, that's the edge of the earth. It'd be fascinating to visit there. But I guess we can shift focus a bit to some of your other sort of conservation work. You both started the Terrapin Conservation Initiative, and this has been a really cool project to follow. It seems like you find a incredible number of terrapins, and that project is sort of a really successful thing. Maybe you can talk about how far that project has come and sort of what the future plans for it are.
I mean, from day one, it's kind of been a crazy ride, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like he was talking about earlier, we have a very heavy pocket where we're located. So, I mean, we get, I think, how many terrapins have we chipped now? How many years has it been? What year?
2017.
I want to say we've done maybe close to 4,000 terrapins we've microchipped in the past couple of years. I've I've chipped a lot of turtles. And now I think as far as like the future goes for what we're doing, so our main goal is chipping the females and excavating nests, because we need to monitor the populations, and it helps with poaching and IDing, right? And then excavating the nests is a must because the predation is out of control. I mean, every single nest lead is eaten. It's insane. We'd love to come up with a man-made but natural area for the animals to come up and lay their eggs naturally in location. But it's a little difficult because we're surrounded by shore traffic and businesses, and it's something we've been talking about trying to do, but it's a difficult task, I would say, right?
Yeah, it's, we're not one of the major beach towns or anything, but this is the outer coastal plain. We're backed up to the salt marsh, and
a lot of clamming, crabbing.
Yeah, there's a lot of old school baymen that they have to.
They either love us or they hate us.
yeah, a lot of them, they're like, "What are you saving those things for?" So it's kind of tough because our main study site, it's right here. It ends at a major seafood restaurant, and they're awesome. We love them. They're always looking out for the turtles. They're always calling us with issues or when we need to step in. But it's kind of hard to construct something right there in their habitat, because literally it's one stretch of road, and the terrapins come out of the marsh and they're immediately on the road. So that's why there's like no safe area anymore. And historically, the terrapins would nest on this point because at the time the substrate was favorable, but now it's all blue gravel, driveway stone that fills up the restaurant's parking lot. So you'll watch these terrapins and they're just for hours on end. They're trying to break through the gravel to lay their eggs. And some of them get through it. You're like, whoa, how did they do that?
Well, it's hard to watch them break through, gravel and compacted soil and beat the sun and beat the cars. And then the next thing you know, a crow is sitting right there, eating the eggs right out of the nest. So it's like a constant heartbreak, I would say, until hatchling release, right? I
mean, when we first scouted the area, because I always knew the terrapins were here, but when we bought the place in 2016, right? 2016, we bought the place. One of the things that I was personally excited about was like, these terrapins are literally going to be in our backyard pretty much. And, that led to the project. But the predation, when we were first scouting it out, like there was just no nests left. It was like a massacre of turtle eggs everywhere.
I have people feeding feral cats and fox and raccoons, right?
The raccoons are so bold that they're coming out during the day for turtle eggs.
Yeah. I found a cop standing in the middle of the road in broad daylight with his gun out. And I was like, hi, what are you doing? What are you looking for? You know? And he's like, somebody said there's a rabid raccoon. I'm like, it's not rabid.
It's just smart.
Eating all the turtle eggs.
And the crows, the crows know her. They follow her car. They follow her. They won't bother anybody else on the road because nobody else knows where the turtles are. She does. So they'll all hang out on a power line, just sitting there. I think you've had it in some of the videos, right, that we've done. And they'll just sit there and they'll wait for her to turn her back. If she's working with one turtle, they'll go drop down to the other turtle and pull as many eggs out of that nest while she's laying them.
Are you seeing like any nest survive, or is it like almost complete mortality? Like
occasional hatchling, right?
Yeah, I think in the last how many years has it been? 6 years. We've probably come across how many hatchlings would you say we've come across?
5.
Natural.
5,
yeah.
maybe?
And I have several locations. I mean, you almost never ever find hatchlings ever.
We've seen a couple squished in the road, but as far as live,
if you walk from start to finish, it's like a 3-mile stretch. I mean, every 3 inches is a dug up nest. I mean, completely with the eggshells everywhere. I mean, it's not good.
It's really wild.
Yeah. And the speed limit's 50 miles an hour on the road too.
Oh, yeah. Do you see adult females get hit, I'd assume?
I've been down there like so I get a lot of people asking if they can volunteer, and I do appreciate the offer, but everything is weather dependent, tidal dependent. You kind of don't really know when they're going to come up. So every single day, starting from late May all the way to like the third week of July, I get in my car and I drive to locations, and I have to check because I don't know when they're coming. So when we get these like heavy hitting days, we'll get like 200 terrapins crossing like
That's insane.
time.
It looks like an arrabata. Looks like a sea turtle.
Yeah.
Arrabata.
So one of us will patrol the road. The other person stays at the end. And I think I remember one time I had 2 giant Rubbermaid bins. I think I had like 60 terrapins at one given time, trying to get my measurements, pit tag them, and release them. Well, there's times where I'm by myself, and I remember I was parked in one of the other locations in a parking lot, and I want to say I had like 5 terrapins that I was chipping. And while I have these 5 terrapins in my bin, I look around me. I've got 10 other females crossing here, crossing there. One's digging, one's looking around, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep my eye on that one and that one. And I'm standing there, and I'm mid-chipping. I look up, and a delivery truck ran over one of the females. I was waiting for her nest. And I heard the crack. I look up, there she is. And then the birds immediately went after her, just pulling her apart while she's trying to drag herself away. I called him. I was like,
there's been several times where, she'll go down there to work, and, I'm here working with our animals, and she'll call me, not even 15 minutes later, you got to get down here. I need your help. There's too many of them, or this just happened. Or
I also get rescue calls all year round. Like if somebody finds anything, really, I get rescue calls. And it was the end of the season, and we kept getting this report of a terrapin who they kept trying to release back into the bay. They kept getting washed up on shore, and I was like, something must be wrong. Went out to the turtle, and a fisherman had took a knife and just stabbed it, I guess trying to get to the spine, and missed the spine. So this poor thing died of an infection. It didn't even kill it. Or we had another call where somebody ran over the head of a terrapin.
Yeah.
And
there's been a lot.
It caused severe brain damage, but the turtle was still alive. We had to take it to get euthanized. I mean, we get all kinds of calls on terrapins.
We had put up, we had bought really nice turtle crossing aluminum signs and went down there with a ladder, put them up on all the telephone poles. And what was it, 2 nights later, somebody stole every single one of them. Yeah. So we're, but on a positive note, our presence has definitely changed things. There's a lot less of that kind of stuff happening. People just generally slowing down because where they're working, so even if they don't care about the turtles, they don't want to hit a person, so they're slowing down.
What about that local that yelled at us, remember? What was her name? Don't say her name. We were working. This happened 2 seasons in a row. Same person, where she came, she pulled over, ran out of her car, slammed her door, starts marching up to us, and she's like, "What are you doing with those turtles?" And I'm like,
"Yeah,
we have a permit." She's like, "Oh, okay. I'm watching our turtles." I'm like, "Okay, lady."
We have a guy on our second main study site, which is only like a mile in the other direction. He waits. He's got a big giant. Is that an English Mastiff or an African Mastiff?
I think it's an African.
He's got a huge Mastiff, and he just hangs out there with a bat. And if somebody comes sailing down the road too fast, he pops out in the road and he'll hit their tailpipe with
okay. Don't report him.
Well, I didn't give his name. He's awesome. He doesn't want the turtles to get hit.
That's awesome.
A tail light can be fixed. Okay, a roadkill terrapin.
I don't think he actually hurt somebody's car.
He did. He told me.
Did he?
Well, I mean, he told me he did.
Yeah,
he really didn't.
He's got our personal phone number. We like him.
Yeah, he's good. He's good people.
The mass nesting that you see, is it like that continuously, or does that happen like only a couple days, or is it always just hundreds of them coming out at a time?
So like I said, it's hard to predict. I try to watch the weather and the moon.
You're usually right.
Yeah. We will get a pretty consistent run for, I would say, about a month. But then you have these like 2-day spans where you're like, you are frozen in shock at how many turtles you see. I'd say that those pockets come maybe 3 or 4 times a season where you're just like
inundated.
Yeah, you don't even know what to do with yourself.
Mm.
But there's a pretty steady flow, I would say, as long
Yeah,
as,
like you're going to
as
see
long as it's
them.
not too dry. When it's dry
Yeah, if it's too dry and too hot,
or a full moon.
yeah. But they'll start trickling in. Usually around Memorial Day weekend. Might be earlier this year because of this heat. And then June's the big month. And you'll have I think
I usually
2
get
or
2 or 3
3
clutches.
Yeah.
I'll have females double clutch, sometimes triple clutch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because where I'm from in Delaware, it's not that far from you, but I don't see anything like that. I see incredible densities of terrapins, and actually don't have a problem finding hatchlings at all there. I mean, I see at least 4 or 5, and I'm just out there casually, I'm not even doing anything. But there's a massive amount of dunes and habitat for them to nest in that they just don't seem to have a problem. I walk up in there and find predated nests, but there's always a bunch of hatchlings and juveniles. And the one road that they used to have to cross about 5 or 6 years ago, they built up a nest. They built a barrier that keeps them from getting onto the road. So I don't even see roadkill ones anymore, but never seen more than like 1 or 2 out at a time to nest. I've never seen anything like that. Like it's always.
It's like an arabada.
Yeah, it's like an arabada. It's very unique here, and even
it's a very small location for such a high density of population. I mean, we are up against a 47,000 acre wildlife refuge that's known for its shore birds. And then as far as like the terrapin nesting habitat goes, I mean, it is literally roadways. That's it. That's all they have. So
even within the refuge, it's still a road.
I mean, it's easy peasy for a bird to be like, oh, I see that happy dance. I'm going to go climb down and just get my meal,
I mean, they're really, even the state knows, it's very unique, like, because there's a couple different terrapin projects within the state of New Jersey that we're all connected with. But this site is just really special.
My numbers are, I think, pretty extreme, I would say, as far as like the population goes down here.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of adults, but those adults aren't going to live forever. You know what I mean? And if these predated nests and hatchlings keep going on and on and on and on, you don't have many recruits,
How you said you've marked like 4,000 females at this point? Are you still getting like new ones, or are you getting closer to having marked all of them, you think? Or is it like, no, it's still the same flow of new individuals?
No, I would say that I get a lot of repeated females. Maybe like half of them are repeats, half of them are new in one of my oldest locations. But the other locations, I mean, I'm getting a lot of new ones.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of recaptures, and it's kind of, she gets to know these terrapins, you know what I mean? Like just the second she sees them now, I know who that is, so it's like extra heartbreaking when you lose one of those,
So you're saying with the roads are the only place they have to nest, so like they're all concentrated there, and that's probably responsible for the seeing so many of them. Like, because what I'm used to is like vast amounts of dunes that they could nest anywhere. So it doesn't sound like they have that there.
They don't.
No.
They really don't.
No, and it's really interesting too. Like I have 2 specific locations that I would say I focus a lot on because I know the population's most dense there. So I spend a lot of time, but they don't crisscross. I think it's like, what is it, 3 mile difference?
2 point. This was what I did the talk on at the TSA conference. I forgot off the top of my head.
2.5 miles.
Like 2.5 miles. Yeah.
They don't. The ones from location A never end up on location B and vice versa. They never crisscross. They always come back to the same nesting location, no matter how close they are. And if you look at it on a map, you'll see the waterways are certainly they can travel in between locations if they wanted to. It's just crazy how I have these females always religiously come back here and these ones come back there, and then after nesting season is over, they're gone. They go back out to the bay. They don't hang out here. So it's pretty nuts to think about how do they have that GPS tracker to go back to where they know they can nest.
Well, it's our belief that, we haven't been able to prove this yet, but we think that these Site A terrapins hatched there, and that's why they're returning to it. And then Site B, those terrapins that hatched there are returning to that, even though the Site B terrapins literally have to cross by, they have to pass Site A, they still make their way over to Site B to nest. And in the talk, I think I showed this. Remember we showed the map, and there's a couple tributaries that come off the main creek that get really close to each other, to where the terrapins would just be like a hop, skip, and a jump to the next site, and they still don't do it. So maybe one day we'll be able to prove that with the right equipment. Yeah.
Is there any talk of incorporating that kind of thing with sea turtles, like microsatellites has been done? Is there any like future plans for doing something like that to figure out the philopatry aspect of things? Or
I think we have to talk to the state about that a little bit more. Right now the state is a little bit more concerned with just data collection, general data collection, GPS coordinates. But that is something that, we actually have a meeting later today. We should probably bring up to them, about, trying to figure that out, somehow.
That's really interesting. A lot of potential for some really cool work, and what you're doing now even is really, it's commendable, and you're making a huge impact, which is cool. And one thing that you guys do that's different than a lot of scientists or researchers is document the process on the YouTube channel that we mentioned. I'm sort of curious with that. What has that process been like? What's your sort of strategy? I noticed that over the past few years, it's adapted a lot. There's been a lot of changes to things, and it's really kind of exciting to click on, and just the production quality is really good. And sort of what's the strategy for that? And maybe what's the most positive, maybe wild encounter you've had with someone through YouTube that you wouldn't have connected with otherwise?
That's an interesting question. Well, he was doing everything himself on social media. We honestly never paid attention to YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube was accidental. Yeah.
And then one day I was like, hey, why don't I try to blah, blah, blah. I'll try to film, for you so you can do this, do that. And then it just kind of spiraled from there as far as like production quality goes. I have a background in art history, photography, horticulture. I have like an artistic, I guess, outlook on things. And with that, I can be a little tech savvy. And
very.
Yeah, we just kind of fell into it and made it happen, right?
With your background and my background in music, I knew how to be a front man and how to entertain and not be afraid to do that. And she knew how to do all the technical stuff and how to make things look correctly. And she'll even tell me sometimes like, hey, stop saying that. Don't say that like this, so we're always working off each other. And for how much of a front man I can be, I still prefer having guidance. I like, her to, because even though we're in this together, turtles were ingrained in me at 5 years old. So like I said, I tend to be very scientific at times. And what we both wanted to do is education is the true passion for us. So what we really wanted to do was bring the fun to a group of animals.
We grew up with like Bill Nye, Jeff Corwin, Steve Irwin. I mean, Brian Barczyk influenced us when we were, 10 years ago?
Yeah, when we first met.
He came and filmed at our place, and it's just been, my goal is, there's a lot of things up here, but it wasn't always, it can be dry. When it's really scientific, it can be dry. So I said, well, you're not talking to, the TSA, you're talking to the general public, and they don't understand this and they don't understand that. Like, you need to paint the different picture. And the combination of you having all the knowledge and me having more of like a down to earth outlook, we kind of just mixed that together.
Yeah, it was about, it's a great way to put it, because it's kind of how things have morphed. There has been a lot of adaptations. There has been a lot of evolving and changing, from starting off just, recording
how-tos,
iMovie, like, hey, this is how you identify Testudo species. This is how you should raise a baby tortoise. Like, this is the difference between the different Terrapin box turtles, and what we want, but I never wanted to lose the educational aspect of it. So we figured out together how to be fun, how to be exciting. And even when things really aren't, you know what I mean? Like when it's like, well, we really just kind of have to feed everybody today, but how can we make this interesting for both the people that know turtles and reptiles and the people that don't? Like, how can we do that and make it easy to understand, but not sound like a child doing it? And, like I said, like bring the fun to a group of animals that a lot of times gets left in the dust. I'm sure you guys feel that way. How many times are we going to watch a documentary about big cats? Sure, we love big cats. We don't have but it's like enough. Like turtles really can be exciting, really can be. And here's how, and you don't have to make an alligator snapping turtle bite you. You can.
Whenever we see anything on Nat Geo or Discovery or Animal Planet about turtles and tortoises, I'm like, oh my God, pause it! Look, it's on TV.
But then when we're watching it, we're like, nope, that's not a leopard tortoise. Nope, yeah. But it's kind of evolved into like this is our lives. We're going to share it with you, but you will always be taught something.
And I definitely have like ADHD, and I'm very like, okay, next topic. Okay, next topic. Okay, next topic.
And I have a hard time with the topics.
Yeah. Sort of in the line of the YouTube or just, well, this has been, I guess you're documenting this more now, but you also have the rescue component, and I think that a lot of that's been highlighted on YouTube with Chief Brody and other sort of situations. What's been the most rewarding rescue for you to work on, and why was that the case?
Probably Brody. I mean,
there's
something about and I love all animals. I'm actually recently into inverts. There's nothing I don't love. But when you work with like the bigger animals, there's just something about like, I don't know, it might sound cheesy, but like something about like their spirit to them. You know what I mean? They're just like a bigger presence too.
They're charismatic. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I've worked with, giraffes and bears and anteaters and horses and pigs and birds, everything. But when you have like that bigger animal, it's almost like you unintentionally like personify that animal a little bit more. And I don't know, getting him in the condition that he was in. And I even said this to you before, I knew it was bad with Brody, but now that he's better and I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe he made it. Like I can't, because I go back and I have to show people the old footage of him when we first got him, and he couldn't open his mouth completely because his head muscles were gone, like gone. And he's a snapping turtle. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was
a big one.
Yeah, that was gnarly.
That for me, that's the most rewarding one. But we got to go back a little bit before that. What led up to that was Chum.
Yeah,
Chum was the first male, and he was a Teminkia. He was a Western alligator snapper, and he was found in New Jersey, walking around. Animal control found him, about an hour plus north of here. And John from Popcorn Park Animal Refuge, who we do a ton of stuff with, he called me. It was June 2020. And he called me up. He said, Chris, we just got the biggest snapping turtle we've ever seen crossing whatever highway it was.
Yeah.
And, and we're used to getting that call, and I said, John, is it just a common?
Snapping turtle
I'm like, John, is it just a big common going to nest? It's June. He goes, this is not a common snapping turtle. It's got to be an alligator snapper. So I said, send me a picture. He sends me a picture of this thing jammed into a Great Dane kennel. And it's like this in it. And I'm like, dude, that is an alligator snapping turtle, So they, animal control signed it over to us. And, we weren't even like in love with the animal yet. We were like, we got some work to do. So we instantly hit the ground running to build a pond for him. And my brother-in-law came down and helped me dig. My father came down to make the walls high enough because, no, alligator snapping turtles are not essentially a dangerous animal unless you stick your hand in their mouth. But we had little daughters that love the animals. So we didn't want them running to the water's edge and sticking their hand in there.
Dogs.
Yeah, and the dogs, So my father came over and he's building the walls up while I'm trying to finish the pond. And we built this big pond for him. We put him in there. It was this great moment. And we had him for 2 years, but we never knew what could be wrong with him. And he just all of a sudden out of the blue in July 2022, he dies. And it was like gut wrenching that we lost him, and like, look, we're not just pet people, you know what I mean? We're involved in conservation. We're involved in scientific research and all this other stuff. So, we get it. We try not to get overly attached to certain things, but this was hard for us. And I filmed a little short right after he had died where I actually got choked up in it. And I didn't even want to post it, but Casey was like, I think you should post it. You're being real about it. So I posted that. And again, mystery as to why he died. But the belief from our veterinarians is that he was just too compromised to begin with. And because you guys know everything happened so slowly with them, that he was just dying over time, and he had stopped eating at that point, and that was it. So with that video coming out, we were asked if we wanted this other snapping turtle, and we weren't really ready for it yet. We're still kind of hurt by what happened, but we could see, that it needed a home. We were like, okay, sure. But then when we got the turtle, we could see how unbelievably emaciated he was, and, nobody could figure out why. He was eating, no parasites, blood work was fine, x-rays were fine. So we kept him awake for the last 2 winters and bulked him up, gave him the proper diet, gave him some extra things to help put that weight on too. And it's just been unbelievably rewarding.
Yeah.
And it has
especially
nothing.
Seeing him in the aquascape.
Yeah. We just released him into the aquascape ecosystem. He's got it all to himself.
I know they're not expressive animals, but I swear he looks happy.
If you're
give him more.
You know what I mean? That is that, and not to take anything away from any other species, even something as simple as a red-eared slider, there is just something so special about those animals, that they're just incredible. And, what's amazing about him too, and Chum was like this too, like people are shocked at how gentle he'll be, even at feeding time. It's because they're not stupid. You know what I mean? Like the animal knows, like, I'm not here to attack you. I'm not here to rip things away from you. Like, you're feeding me. So thank you. You know what I mean? Like in that regard, but he's just been, knock on wood, one of the biggest success stories and one that we both find incredibly rewarding.
I think the rescue aspect of this is like my favorite thing, whether it's a sulcata or snapping turtle, like anything that's coming to us with a story and a background that we can share to reach people. That's where I'm like, yes, that is why I do the whole YouTube thing.
We want to reach people on different levels.
Or like when we got the rescue from the basement tortoises, that was just beautiful.
Yeah, that was a great story. It's, look, we're like I said, we're scientific. We do conservation work. We're into very rare animals too, just like anybody else. We're enamored with the chorus species and some of the world's rarest wildlife. But we also, one thing I love about what we're doing, which really works well on the YouTube channel, is, hey, so what if it's just a sulcata tortoise? You know what I mean?
It came with a story. And we remind people, you may go to a reptile show and see 1,500 of these things for sale, but now go to Africa, okay, where they're actually endangered. And people are like, wait a minute, what? They're endangered? There's so many of them. Like, yeah, at the reptile shows, in the pet stores there are, but in nature, they're having a hard time even reintroducing them over there. So it's fun to teach people that stuff when you have this, we have a female sulcata tortoise that people really like on our channel, that she was found on Fort Dix here in New Jersey. Somebody just ditched her. She's just walking around in the summer, loving life, not knowing that once winter comes, she's going to die, And we took her in again from animal control. And it's really interesting to use that animal as like, here's this tortoise that is so abundant, but it's only abundant because we made it that way in a captive management situation. So it's fun to be able to highlight these common species in a way that some other people maybe have not been able to yet, Well,
I think like the public's perception of different animals matters a lot too. Like alligator snapping turtles, the way that I look at them is like category as sea turtles and Galapagos tortoises, like large enigmatic turtles. But the general public doesn't see them that way. They generally see them as like, oh, it's a swamp monster or it's a river monster that is aggressive and just a scary animal that's dangerous. And it's like, well, no, that's not what they, despite how they look.
Yeah.
They're generally really tame back. Most of their combative energy is directed at each other and among males. So they're how gentle they can be is really, really incredible. I've even seen some wild individuals that have been so habituated with people that they'll come up and just interact with you or just hang out with you. And it's just like, what the hell? It's so, but yeah,
it's funny you said, my daughters, we always talk about how like our kids are born into this life with all these animals. They don't know a life without animals.
Yeah.
So who was I talking? I forget what I was talking to, but I said to them like, oh yeah, like some people might be scared of Chief Brody. And they're like, why, mommy? I'm like, well, they call them swamp monsters. And she's like, he's not a monster. They're very like, what do you people don't like them? Same thing with tarantulas. They each Santa Claus brought them tarantulas for Christmas. And they were like, oh my gosh, it's the one I wanted. Look how fuzzy they are. I love them. They got to high five a tarantula. I mean, they love it. They go to school and it's not received the same way. And they're like, why? Why aren't people like, why don't they think it's cool? I'm like, you know what, honey? I don't know.
Yeah. Again, like going back to Chief Brody's story, something like that. And again, luckily, it's been a positive outcome for the turtle because the turtle's well-being is what we only cared about, really. But what's been awesome is, and I was just talking to Greg Brashear about this yesterday because I was picking his brain about typical Macrokelly stuff, and he, we were talking about that, and I was even talking to Chris Hagen about how like this turtle story has allowed a really nice global audience to appreciate alligator snapping turtles. You know what I mean? They're like, wow, that's awesome. Like it's not trying to eat your children, and that's the kind of stuff that I love to see. Like, I don't want all these people to go out and try to get pet alligator snapping turtles. I just want them to stop calling them swamp monsters or stop saying, looks like soup. You know what I mean? And knock it off. This is an intelligent animal that's managed to survive a lot longer than most things, and that I think is my biggest takeaway from his story and a lot of these rescue stories, but especially for his species. Cause I'm like you, man, I see them just as enigmatic as a Galapagos tortoise,
Yeah. Majestic. That's a great word for it. Yeah. I love your videos of when you're actually up close and like feeding him and you can actually see just how like calm and gentle that he is. Cause that's how they usually are most of the time. And people don't know that. Like they look like a terrifying animal, but even wild ones, they're just like, when you get them in traps or whatever, they want them and fearful. Like you're never going to be attacked by a wild alligator snapping turtle. The only time you'll get bit by one is if you're messing with it. Like they're probably one of them is for what they look like, their behavior, and it doesn't really match their appearance.
No.
It's not like a small female common snapping.
No, common snappers are a different story, but still, it's not like common snappers are dangerous if you don't mess with them, and they have the same potential to be gentle and they're intelligent, but the alligator snappers get like such a bad reputation for what they are.
I know. I mean, we battle that with snakes too.
Oh yeah.
We recently rescued an 8.5 foot albino boa. Sweetest snake you'll ever meet.
She's amazing.
I mean, the thing is unbelievable. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body, and we have to be careful when we post snake content because a lot of turtle people, it's amazing. They're both reptiles, but
such a divide.
It's such a divide between the rest of the reptile community and turtles. But there's plenty of people that appreciate these snakes, but there's a lot of people that are just like, no way, absolutely not. That thing's going to choke you out. That thing's going to, and it's, it's just not like that. But, maybe one day we'll have a snake success story like that where we can touch enough people. But, Brody's story right now is really been like that excitement in that video of me putting him in there. That's real. I literally was like a kid. We knew we were going to do it. We didn't tell anybody on YouTube yet. But I kept saying to her, I can't wait for this, man. I am so excited to do this. I'm so excited to do this, And then, Greg was texting me. He's like, dude, he looks so awesome in there.
All of our snapping turtles were kind of a great rescue story. If you think about it, with Janet being kept how she was kept
in unit
in the little fish tanks, these giant turtles. I mean, Bubbles getting her first
leopard tortoise,
ray of sunshine. Like there's just so much that's so rewarding to you just feel good about it.
Yeah. Because it's not always, it doesn't always feel good working with animals. There's a lot of heartbreak.
No, I mean, even right now, I have one turtle with me in Florida. I would love to get more into keeping turtles once I'm not a college student, but I forgot a loggerhead musk turtle with me that I found while we were fossil hunting out on those, and I'm like, that's a bit unusual, but you see that every once in a while. So I went over and grabbed it off the log, and it didn't even try to move. I'm like, all right, that's a bad sign. And then when I grabbed it, I realized it had this huge puncture into its shell where and it was all infected and necrotic. The turtle had no body weight, and it smelled like a rotting corpse. Like it was a living turtle, and it smelled. I was like, all right, this turtle's gonna die if I leave it. So I'm gonna bring it to our vet who comes out to all the turtle surveys. And we didn't think that musk turtle was gonna make it. We were like, this thing is too far gone. She removed several scutes, and a good bit of the carapace was just mush and had to be removed. And once all his wound was removed and cleaned out, she did x-rays, and I thought he had been shot with a pellet gun or something. Yeah. But there was nothing inside him that would have indicated that. And after looking at the bite on his neck and where he came from, he probably survived an attack from an alligator snapping turtle.
I was going to say, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Alligator snappers love to eat musk turtles. If you're a musk turtle, alligator snappers are terrifying. So
good point.
Yeah, so he recovered really well. I mean, I have him in a tank right next to me right now. And that there's just this gaping wound that's slowly healing back up. But once he got the proper care and everything, I'm amazed at the turnaround. I mean, just now I'm so emotionally attached. I'm just careful and hoping that his recovery keeps going in the right direction. But it should for now.
Is he eating well?
Yeah, he's eating well too. He's eating and he eats anything. He eats pinkies. I mean, I'm just letting him eat his natural stuff. Like snails is what they eat in the wild. And I've stocked his whole tank with those, but I'm still trying to supplement his body weight with just things like pinkies or turtle food, really get him up more. So he's gained like 40 or 50 grams. So he's starting to get a little fat. So and his jaw muscle was really atrophied. Like he looked bad at the time. And he's right here. I can just grab him.
I hope that's great.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Turtle show and tell.
He's gonna drip water. He's gonna drip water all over my thing.
Oh,
nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
And there's the wound. Look at that.
Wow.
So that's all soft. There's scar tissue keeps coming off.
Yeah.
So, but so he doesn't hesitate to try and bite you he's got the right attitude and everything, but that wound, all of this bone that was around it all had to be removed. You could see his organs and his body cavity was open. So, but turtles are tough. So, yeah.
It's amazing what they can overcome and how fast they can overcome it in the right conditions. I mean, I've found so many terrapins. I'll never forget. I found a female that I think she was a boat strike. Same thing. I saw her body cavity was completely open and I could see her breathing, but she was hydrated and bright eyed and had eggs. So I put her down. I watched her dig a nest and put her back in the water, found her 3 weeks later and everything was fused. Just
incredible.
Insane.
Terrapins may get, we've talked about this, the terrapins may get a little bit of a head start in healing too because of the salinity in the water,
I would that almost certainly has to help them because the freshwater turtles don't necessarily have that. Mm-hmm. And he was really badly infected. So, but the saltwater probably helps.
Saltwater is magic.
Yeah.
Well, thinking about all of the stuff that Garden State Tortoise does, it's interesting to me. It seems like you focus on a lot of different scales. You've got kind of the ecosystem level in providing the habitats for your animals that mimic their natural range. You work at the population level with the recognition of all of the variation, the and sort of the phenotypes of the Testudo tortoises and all the other species you keep, and then the individual level, which is the rescue and sort of the care for each individual animal. It's really cool to see that, and not a lot of people have the capacity for it. And what you guys have done is it's incredible at all of those different scales.
Thanks.
Yeah. And as we start to sort of wrap up, we've got a few final questions I think that we'll kind of go into.
Sure.
The first one I'm curious is, you guys have managed to do a lot of things in conservation, research related, and rehabilitation and keeping, but there are a lot of people that don't really, they have other jobs, you know, they can't integrate the research in the field as much, and it becomes challenging. What are some ways, do you think, that captive keepers, that the people that do this more of a hobby or such, can have an impact in conservation, and what are the best ways for them to do that?
I think one of the
Identifying what they have.
Yeah,
There's
sure
a
they know
lot of
what they have.
people who say, "Oh, I have a Herman's tortoise. What is it?" Like, we get a lot of emails all the time.
Yeah, that is a big one.
Starting at home with what they know, their knowledge of what they have is going to be huge, right?
Yeah, of course. You know, being aware of your local wildlife laws too. You know what I mean? Like you gotta. It brings me to like the broadest way to put it, which is something that we're always talking about, is trying to unite these different sectors. Okay, conservation and preservation in the form of bringing the field biologists, the zoos, the private keepers, the responsible private keepers, you know, bringing it all together and remembering that the one common goal or the one common interest is that we love and appreciate these animals. And the field biologist doesn't necessarily have to have pet turtles or breed turtles, but they can respect the person that's doing that in a responsible level, and vice versa. Just because you're not able to do field work, or it's not in your wheelhouse, or you don't want to do it, doesn't mean you shouldn't respect that and learn something from it, because all of these different avenues can learn from each other. And if that comes together, we might save turtles, you know? And I think that the number one thing, as cliche as this may sound, is trying to have an open mind about everything that's going on to save these animals. Don't pick a side, you know, support them all. There's good and bad in all the different sides. We can tell you that from experience in working on all the different sides, that there's always good and bad, you know? And that's a turtle keeper, a turtle breeder can definitely have an impact on the conservation of turtles and tortoises as a whole by being responsible, being properly educated, and being open-minded. You know, there's a level of respect that needs to be,
And share it.
Yeah.
In some way.
Oh yeah, sharing. Yeah,
You know?
that's right. That's huge.
If you love something, you know, share it and get other people to love it. That's the best way, you know, to spread the word, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That's why we do what we do on YouTube. We try to make it more relatable and more like, here, love this. We love it. Now you need to love it. Right?
Yep.
What are some of the exciting things you're looking forward to in the future? I'm particularly curious. Do you have plans to go to any of the habitats where the species you keep are? And is that something in particular? What are upcoming events?
We are going to be in Corsica, France at the end of May. We will be in the wild habitat of the Western Herman's tortoises. We have a guide lined up. We'll be seeing them. I'm hoping to do a little bit of field research. We're going to be with them for 3 days or 4 days.
I think it's 3 days.
Is it 3 days? Like 3.5 maybe. So we're very excited for that trip entirely, because we're going, we're being flown out to the UK. We're leaving May 14th, actually. The conference, the European Turtle Alliance conference, is May 18th and 19th at Riddle University in Chelmsford, UK. We're giving the keynote out there, and we're going to be just talking about all the different things we're doing. And then we're going to be going out there. We're going to be seeing different tortoise centers. And then we're going to end the trip in Corsica with the wild Herman's tortoises. So that's going to be.
Too, right?
Oh, we are. That's right. We're going to the south of France to see the main Western Herman's tortoise conservation center, Satom. So it's going to be the trip of a lifetime. We're freaking out over it.
Yeah, but we also have a lot of other trips planned too.
Yeah, that's
we have another conference in Denmark.
Yeah.
Right, in August.
Yeah.
And then we have a bunch of YouTube inspired trips, don't
Yeah, we have
We've
a bunch
got
of those.
Turtle Fest in Punta Gorda.
Yeah, that's right. Ty
At
Park's Turtle
Iguanaland.
Fest. Yep.
That's
That's April 27th at
we have our
Iguanaland.
Snake Discovery Build Off championship round coming up.
Mhm.
What else is there?
TTPG's coming up.
Yep.
TSA's coming up. There's a whole
A lot of travel.
lot of travel coming up. But as far as getting to see the animals in the wild, this is going to be a major first for us, and probably going to cry.
Probably gonna be a little embarrassing for you.
That's all.
Yeah. But I'm going to share from that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Casey's going to film
I'm gonna
it.
record everything. Yeah.
We're going to, I'm going to go. We're going to do YouTube friendly, and we're going to do science big time with that one. So it's going to be really exciting. Not to mention, the island of Corsica is absolutely gorgeous. So I'm probably not going to want to leave.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what comes from there.
So far, that's
Yeah.
what we got so far.
That's really cool. When I was in Madagascar, the Soptum facility in Ifadi in Madagascar, that's where we worked out of with the radiated tortoise confiscation. So that I'm familiar with that group. They do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
That should be exciting. That's really cool. And it's and in a special place, even within the range of the Herman's tortoise. That's Corsican population is really interesting at that. So
it's actually the most dense population of them. So we should see a fair amount of them.
That's awesome. Well, we're looking forward to when that comes out. I guess the last thing, just to wrap up, is for someone. A lot of the listeners of this are younger college students, that kind of thing, looking to incorporate their interest in turtles into a career somehow. If you've got any advice for someone looking to do that, to make turtles part of a career or a career, turtle work, what would that be?
Get your hands on them.
Yeah.
Get out there and get the experience, because yes, you have to hit the books, and yes, you have to listen to your professor, but from our experience, like I said earlier, I'm an art history major. I had no bio at all in my background. My knowledge comes from experience, and I feel like in today's world, it's pivoting that way, where experience is huge. So go volunteer, get your hands dirty, go look at them, go hold them, go look into their wild habitat, go be hands-on, right?
Network, be
build a network.
Be involved with all the different organizations, all the different entities, meet people from zoos, meet the field biologists and herpetologists, and the people from the private sector that truly, truly love these animals and can share so much about them. Do your research, don't act on impulse, unless it's a trip of a lifetime, and you can get to go experience something, but, don't let the challenges of everyday life get in the way of your passion. Even if somebody tells you that's weird, it's turtles, it's crazy, what are you talking about? Don't let that bother you. It never stopped me. It never ever did. Nobody ever made me second guess what I was doing or how I was doing it. And I just took chances. And luckily I met someone who was willing to take those chances with me. And together you can do anything.
Cool. Well, we'll take that to heart. And for everyone listening, I think it's good advice. So thank you. We do like to, at the end of this, do a little round of turtle trivia. I don't know if we can do this a lot of ways. If you just have some random turtle facts you want to throw at us and see if we can answer it, or we can do a little volley we could throw some questions at y'all, or you can just ask us, however you want to do it.
Well, you guys are smarter than us, so you ask us the questions.
Literally.
I've got one that I came with. This was inspired by my brief looking over for sort of research for this, but it's sort of an open-ended question. You'll probably do fine with it, but for the genus Testudo, list a synonym, a synonymous generic name that was proposed at some point.
For one of the Testudo species?
Just the genus in general. I mean, yeah, it would sort of. The actual genus itself it's something that could be named differently according to different authors, but it would be attached to a species. Yeah. So I'm just looking for a generic name. You wouldn't need a specific epithet.
Cursine.
There you go. Yeah, that was actually the one that I was thinking of. So,
yeah. Nice. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Cursine hermani.
Yeah, you're
Yep.
huh?
Yeah.
But that's interesting. That it wasn't. I misheard you the first time, but I was thinking there was one that was proposed. I was looking through this, and I think that Linnaeus was the one that proposed the name in 1758 in one of his Systema Naturae. But there was Chersis was one that was proposed 70 years later sometime in the 1800s. But Chersine is a contemporary generic name, so that works too. That's cool. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, that's my question I've got. I don't know if Jack or Jason has one, or if any Chris and Casey, if you guys have something random, just the most obscure turtle fact you can think of.
You gotta have something.
Yeah, don't hold back. Go crazy.
I got to here. I wasn't prepared for this.
I keep saying, I always tell people I'll tell them in advance, but that's really never happened. I always forget. It's like when I'm scheduling.
I got one that can be two parts. You know, you guys probably know this. It's if you've been looking up Testudo at all. What are the two? Well, hold on, let me figure out how to phrase this. There's two species complexes within the Testudo genus that in recent years there's two different subspecies of two different species families that got demoted. They got pulled. But one in particular was accepted for a very long time.
Okay, this is interesting. Oh, okay. I think I know. Yeah, one of them. The other one with the Dalmatian tortoise or the Hermanensis. Yeah, that's one. But then the other one. I don't know. I'm thinking it's Russian tortoise related. Is it? Okay, no. Huh. What could it be? I feel like it's going to be one that's sort of obvious when you say it, but
I don't know. Maybe it was. I think it was actually pretty brief too. I'm not sure, but
I probably don't even know the answer to that.
You definitely know this.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, because we thought we had them at one point.
It's not a Greek tortoise.
It's not.
It's not a Greek.
It's not a Greek. It's not a Greek. It's not a Russian. And we already named the Hermans.
Oh, okay. Huh.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're gonna have to tell us. I'm drawing a blank.
Testudo weisengeri.
Okay.
The dwarf marginated tortoise from the Peloponnesus.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. That's great.
Yep.
That's interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I had heard a little bit. How much smaller are they than the typical?
Well, they think it's just an environmental factor. Again, one of those things that they really should do more work on, because the Eastern Hermans that come from there are really tiny too. And they were going to, at one point, they proposed that those Hermans would be called Testudo hermani peloponnesica. And they dropped both. They've dropped the marginated and the Hermans. They said they're all the same right now. So I don't know. I don't remember what exactly that paper said. That was a little while back now, but now I'm going to go look for it.
All right. Well, there you go. I think that's a good point to sort of wrap things up. But if anyone else has anything to say, but yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you guys for both coming on. It's been great it's always fun having a dual discussion with multiple people, and the dynamic that you guys have is great. So, yeah, thank you. And yeah, it was awesome.
Well, thank you guys. I remember not too long ago, Anthony Pirleone and I were talking about you guys, and you guys are incredible. The vast amount of knowledge, between all of you is amazing. Michael, I remember seeing you talk about the Madagascar trip, at the conference, and Jack, your talk last year was incredible. So please
I
keep
want
doing
to
what you're
come look
doing.
for fossils. Did you say you were looking for fossils?
Oh yeah, you have no idea how much I'm into collecting stuff like that.
Oh, well, let's go visit
Come to
Jack.
Florida. There's
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a bucket. There's a handful of like some turtle fossils right here that I got like yesterday.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know how this would necessarily work, but if you guys are involved with the Santa Fe River Turtle Project and such, that might be kind of a cool. You'd probably really enjoy that kind of thing.
Yeah, that
Obviously,
would be
you can't
fun.
talk to
Yeah.
someone, but that could be really cool. Well, thanks for coming on. This has been episode 53. We'll see you on the next one.